For the group that's listening online, I just gave out all the answers to the test that'll be on week 5. Oh wait, that's what I do in my recordings to my class. Now we're going to go over the evidence-based articles here. It's the handout on evidence-based, and we basically said we want to do things that are evidence-based. So when we do OT, PT, PA kind of stuff, health psychology, we like to do things that are evidence-based. So we've asked our group here to look at these various articles and abstracts and try to determine how evidence-based these things are. Since the group to my left identified themselves as being burned out, we gave them article number 1. Can you kind of give us a summary of what this article is saying and how evidence-based you think it is? Go for it, ladies.
Well, this article is written by Mike Adams, the health ranger.
No.
So we laughed because like the first 2 sentences, we sort of thought that this was going to likely lead to like clinical guidelines. But then as we kept reading, it was very apparent that this was this person's opinion, that he was talking about some new evidence that's out there, but he was giving his opinion.
He was giving his opinion. Did he use some information that is actually correct?
I believe so.
Yes, he did. But this was his opinion. Did you know what his opinion was going to be before he wrote the article? I would actually argue the answer to that question would be yes, because what did you say about the author of this article?
Oh, you mean because he's already been publishing on his...
He is the editor of Natural News.
Yeah.
So this, in the totem pole of things, would be what? Opinion-based. This is just one guy saying his opinion, and this is not very high on the scientific evidence-based. Do you think people still probably read this and followed it? Sure, why not? But it's not really based on science. Then we asked our second table to look at article number 2. Go ahead, question.
Oh no.
Oh no?
He was being dramatic here.
You were being dramatic?
Yep.
Yes.
I thought you were going to do an "Oh no, Mr. Bill." He's going to be mean to me. Nobody remember that Saturday Night Live? Okay. Never mind. Oh, never mind. Okay, so for article number 2, you guys had kind of the same type of genre, didn't you? Can you describe what the nature of? Give a little information on what was going on here.
Well, they're giving recommendations for those who may need help regarding depression during pregnancy and treatment recommendations put out by the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists and the American Psychiatric Association. However, we thought that it was probably still opinion, although they kind of know what they're doing, but they do not allude to the fact of what studies. I mean, we were assuming that they have done studies, but
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting situation. It's kind of almost a tweener in a way. It is being put out by official groups. Are these probably the experts in these groups?
could be.
Chances are they are. And as you read through them, do the recommendations in here seem to make some sense? Do you think they've probably looked over most of the research in these fields?
Hard to say.
It's hard to say, but the answer is, I actually have read the whole document. The answer is probably yes. So even though it's still kind of opinion-based, we might put it much higher up on the scale. It's not quite at the level of clinical guidelines, but it is certainly recommendations based on, we got the psychiatry people and the OBGYN people together, the experts, they reviewed the literature. These are smart, scientific people. They are giving their opinions, but it's kind of a joint consensus statement. It's not quite guidelines, but I would say this would be much more evidence-based than the first article. Would we concur about that?
Perhaps.
Perhaps. Yeah, you'd need to see more of the articles, but these were depression during pregnancy treatment recommendations. And yeah, the organizations that are used to form this, would they be the right organizations to have opinions about these things? Are they saying take them, don't take them? No, they're saying you got to risk the benefits to the cost and look at each individual, and here's what we know now. We probably know a lot more Now, I think this is kind of a little dated. Are a lot of women who are pregnant taking psychiatric products?
Postpartum they are.
Postpartum, they are?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them do sometimes take them. So we kind of have something higher up. I would put it not quite at the level of clinical guidelines, but certainly higher than the first one and kind of guideline-ish in a way. Sometimes things don't fall into categories in clear-cut ways here.
Understand that, so like, because so meta-analysis has to pull from multiple articles, and this is saying that a new report says, so if they're only basing this newspaper article, or, press release kind of thing on one study, how could it jump ahead of something that compares multiple studies?
So hopefully the new report, you'd actually want to go to the new report and see what the documentation is in the new report. You would be correct with that.
Like,
You'd-
there's a report.
You'd want to actually go and look at the report and see that this probably 40-page document goes over all the trials done. Could you actually do randomized controlled trials on this type of stuff? No, it would be very unethical to do that, so you could only look at these studies that have been done, but hopefully you would go to that report. It's a very good point to be made, and see what this document says and use your guidance in forming your opinion. But hopefully smart people from these two groups would be the ones to scholarly look at these things and come up with the guidelines based off of that. I just gave you the small bit of information, but it would be a good follow-up thing to do if you had women who you were working with who were pregnant and taking psychiatric products. You would want to look at these types of things. So other questions. It's a good point that's being made there. Boy, the burned out group is asking a lot of questions. Maybe they're not
Because they
quite as-
work so hard, that's why they're burnt out.
Oh, okay. Stop asking so many questions. You're burning me out here.
This kind of a little article though, sort of, I mean, I've seen a lot of these, where they're kind of put out for the healthcare population sort of, but also for sort of the general public. And they
Yeah.
sort of assume that most people don't want to go and read the 40-page document, and they give you sort of the down and dirty lowdown. So then it becomes a question of, do you trust the source? Do you believe it, or do you want to go back to the original
You're-
document and test it all to see if the conclusions they've drawn, whether the data really support it
You're-
or not? And most people don't go do that.
You're exactly correct, and I can actually give you an example of that. In the field that I study, asthma, there have been some very high-level reports of, does asthma self-management really work? And there have been guidelines kind of put out in that realm, and I've read through that, and I'm an asthma guy. And when I read through the document, I had some very serious concerns based on my knowledge of the field of what was going on with this article that I was reading by so-called experts. Of course, I would consider myself to be very knowledgeable on this topic, and so would have questions about it. So yeah, going back to the source is the best way, but many times people don't like to do that. We would hopefully be able to trust these two organizations. They're not saying, get off everything, like Natural News, what was his name? The Ranger kind of guy. And it's much more cautious with, we got to look at the risks and the benefits and so forth. Let's turn to article number 3. Let's see what our group over here, ladies, did you have a thought about article number 3 and where it potentially falls?
So article number 3 was assessing safety and effectiveness of a particular drug in adolescents with ADHD, and they specifically say that this was a multi-center study where it was randomized, double-blinded, and placebo-controlled, and they had a multiple set of criteria and variables that they were measuring. So they basically had a 4-week time where they had to dose up to find the baseline of the medication.
And where would you?
Another 48 weeks where they tracked it. So this was a randomized control trial.
So a randomized, I'm sorry, I took that off the screen. If I can find it back here. So a randomized control peer-reviewed publication. Would your group concur with that situation?
We were hedging in that direction, yes, we were.
Yes.
So randomized control, do you know about the phases of clinical trials? Do people know about that kind of stuff? What phase of clinical trials would you actually put this in? I'm not sure how much you guys know or don't know about that. Are-
I can't remember what it is.
I mean, there
So
are
there's
been-
phase 1, 2, and 3 of clinical trials. So let me do a little education here. Phase 1, is it safe? How many people do you think they use in phase 1?
Only a few.
Maybe 15, 20 people. Phase 2 of clinical trials.
Is it effective?
You look at both safety and is it effective for another small group of people. And when you go from phase 1 to phase 2, can you just do that automatically or do you have to run it by anybody? Oh yeah, that group, the FDA. Yeah, it's a BFD. I'm from New Jersey, I can say BFD.
Okay.
By the way, the other term that I like to have is, and it can be a real PETA. You guys familiar with the term PETA? It's a pain in the, PETA for the day. Okay, anyway, so much for that bad joke.
Stuart, I thought phase 1 didn't involve humans.
Phase 1 does involve humans. Yep, just for, is it safe? Phase 2, you have to get it approved to go into phase 2. A lot of the drug companies go into phase 2, and if it's approved in phase 2, it is safe, and it looks like it might be effective. You move into this. This is what phase?
Phase 3.
Phase 3 of clinical trials. In phase 3, it's randomized, double-blind, multiple centers. You run it with thousands of people, because if you can get it through phase 3 and then submit a document to the FDA, guess what you get to do?
Get a patent.
I don't know if it's, well, is it a patent?
Money.
Yeah, you get to a patent and you get to sell it. It gets to, if it's approved by the FDA, after phase 3, you can sell the product as a prescription. So this is a phase 3 trial. Do the results look good here? Was this probably published in a peer-reviewed journal? I didn't give you the name of the journal here, but it was. This actually led to approval of this particular product for ADHD. So this was a phase 3 clinical trial. How do you think this rates? Pretty high up there. It was kind of a randomized, controlled, peer-reviewed publication type of thing here. Okay. With that being stated,